It's going to be the director of Songdew talking to us. Sandeep Tarkas, you are live next.
Hello, good afternoon. As I speak about CX's business success tool, I'm actually reminded of a not so distant past when we shopped in malls. We occasionally shopped online as well. We actually went and ate at restaurants, occasionally ordering food at home. We went to office daily. Our kids went to school. In office, we went and did this fancy video conferences and net meetings at times. And our children jammed with their friends at night on a PS4. And so we used offline online experiences quite thoroughly. In each of these businesses, we travel to far off places, stayed at hotels, travel by air, all of that. And now in each of these businesses, UX was a very important component to really succeed. And I would like to quote one HBR study, which was done by, it was a study done by Design Institute Management Institute, which actually came up with a startling number that companies which were focused on user experience and design actually outperformed their peers by a very wide margin. And the difference they calculated, so in this case, the study was about 75 companies, all S&P 500 companies. Of that, they took 15 companies which, based on certain very rigid criteria, which is stringent criteria, qualified to be the design-oriented companies. And those companies, they discovered, outperformed their peers by 228% over a period of 10 years. That's a massive differential to achieve basis this. And that alone should be enough for companies to know that UX is a very important factor in ensuring business success. They actually found that these companies which were really outperforming the others, they took design as more than just aesthetics. They actually took design, they went to the core of it. They started selling experiences more than products. These companies also, so they focused a lot on every aspect of the customer journey and tried to make that better. And this is both offline and online. I mean, it's an entire, all the touch points that the customer had, all the usage that the customer had, all of that was studied and products were designed accordingly. These people actually made the customer delight as a number one objective, number one KPI. Very often the customer experience officers reporting directly to the CEOs, and that was the kind of focus that these companies brought. And it became a part of the company philosophy. Their understanding of customers improved dramatically as a result, and so on and so forth. Now, having said that, design is something which is notoriously difficult to measure. It's notoriously difficult to define first. It's very tough to measure after that, and it's very hard to even isolate as a function. So how do we really go about doing something like this? How do we cue in? How do you basically get the focused on that particular aspect? So I'll just talk about a couple of examples. I think first of all, I think let's just appreciate that delivering even in an online scenario in today's day and age, where you have a lot of customer information data, delivering a seamless UX has its own challenges. So the first and the most important among them is the privacy concerns. So companies have to be very careful about what is the customer data that they are acquiring, how are they acquiring it, and has the privacy concerns of the customers been trampled upon while acquiring that. The second bit being data integration. Very often you have all the data, but to integrate that onto one common platform and to get a seamless understanding of the customer. So getting a one view of the customer, as they call it, is often difficult. It's easier said than done. Some of the companies have got this very right. And I think of a very nice quirky example of a company called Stitch Fix, which sells both men's and women's garments. And they have a very cute way of actually getting to know you better. So for example, when you join in, when you go to the site for the first time, they'll ask you three very innocuous questions about, would you rather go to a store or would you shop online? Would you really, are you a trendsetter or not? Would you like to take the latest trends and try them out first? and questions like that, which are very simple and straightforward. By answering those 3 simple questions, you are saying a lot about yourself, about what kind of a customer you are to that brand. The next thing, each visit, they'll probably show you 2 pictures of somebody in a jeans and t-shirt and somebody in a, let's say, evening dress, and saying, which one do you prefer? So they're trying to ascertain through all this simple visual, and you just have to say, I prefer this. That's it. And you move on. Each time, similar questions are thrown at you. And by asking you this very simple sounding questions, they're gathering more and more information about what is it that makes you tick. And once they get that, it's become so much easier for them. You must also appreciate that there are markets where privacy is not such a, it can be trampled upon, it's not such a big concern. I mean, take example of WeChat in China, which has actually been able to create a fabulous experience product, and it's become a super app, which kind of lets you do everything. So your entertainment, your commerce, your even your desire to connect with your office colleagues, doing office work, everything can be managed through this one single app. So they have a really strong single customer view. They are able to do this because in that market, the laws are a little lax on protecting the consumer's privacy. And as a result, they have an unfettered view of the customer. A company like Google, on the other hand, in a kind of rights-driven market where consumer rights become very important, Google, for example, has almost everything on offer. So every single thing that you can think of in terms of engaging with Google has commerce. They have pay apps. They have networking solutions. They have all kinds of, but they have entertainment. But the data's all the data on each of those individual things lies in a silo, and that is protected by firewalls. And very often it's also protected by people's egos and territorial instincts. So a person looking after YouTube may be loath to share the data with some of its customers who are working on Google Meet, for example, or vice versa. So these kind of things also sometimes hold back companies from offering a superior UX experience to the customer, because you're not able to, first of all, get primary data on the customer to the extent that you would like. And even if the data is available in your organization, you're not able to use it quite that freely. With AI and with possibilities of churning very large, huge chunks of data in one go, plus deriving intelligence from it, all these things are becoming quite, we are seeing a performance there, which is kind of going up by a notch every day. And there are all signs around us to tell us that this UX will get better. Coming back to the example that I spoke about right at the beginning, I spoke about the fact that in not such a distant past, we did all these things in different spheres. Today, we have come to a stage that currently, at least, we are doing all of this in one place. So all your office work, your networking, your meeting with friends, your entertainment needs, your commerce, all of this is happening through, in many cases, through a single outlet, through a single interface. And that gives companies a beautiful opportunity. I'm also reminded of this thing from our mythology, of the story of Samudra Manthan. And I think the post-COVID world is really reflecting that beautifully. But just before I come to that, I would also like to complete that Google example that I was talking about. That Google finds it difficult to very often integrate and really have a single customer view, though they have more data about customers than any other organization in the world. But they still struggle at times to put all of this under getting a single customer understanding. And the thing is that UX also added to this. The difficulty sometimes is that a lot of organizations fail to fully appreciate what UX means. A lot of people actually understand UX as primarily they look at it as UI, which is just an interface, and it's a lot more than that. And particularly, there's a tendency among the online organizations to treat UX as primarily UI, And it's not so. There is far more to UX than UI alone, and that is the point that companies and good UX designers, that's how they understand the why, what, and how of products. So they understand the why, which is about the motives and values and views that customers have on the products and the competitors. They understand the what, which is the functionality that the thing of, or the kind of features that the product has, and they also understand the how, which is the accessibility and the aesthetics of the product. So if and when you have a fuller understanding of all of this, the UX can actually start becoming that much a potent force in making your business go forward. And this is true of large business as it is for small businesses and startups. So I was talking about Samudra Manthan from our mythology. It's one of those glorious chapters where the sea of milk was churned to essentially find the Amrit. But when the Samudra Manthan begins, and today's COVID scenario is nothing but a kind of Samudra Manthan that all of us are going through, the first thing that comes out in Samudra Manthan is very vicious kind of poison, which is halahal, as it was called, and which was then taken on by Shiva in his throat and kind of placed there to kind of save the mankind. But we have seen that in the early days of COVID, I think that the way that it was the worst. You saw joblessness, you saw drops in economy, you saw all kinds of negatives. So largely negative headlines is what dominated the early phases of this thing. The Samudra Manthan story, however, goes forward to then there are 14 Ratnas which come out after the initial halal coming out, and eventually you get this elixir, the Amrit, and Amrit is what they started this whole exercise for. And I do believe that post this entire in the post-COVID world, there is this Amrit waiting for us at the end of it, which I think for those who want to really achieve that elixir, which will in a business perspective, I'm looking at that elixir as a way to drive your business forward, to find a formula for your business that kind of really takes it forward by leaps and bounds. To me, that Amrit is the willingness and ability of a company to offer a superior user experience to their customers across the entire value chain. And I think the post-COVID world actually has made it easier for us to do that, because for a while at least it's congregated everything onto one platform. So if you're able to correct it here, then when the customers then go out in the outer world and they start exploring, we start going back to the normal times, it will be far easier, having understood and having cracked the formulation here. It will be far easier to offer a similar formulation in going to other channels, other physical channels. So from the digital world to the physical world, the companies that are willing to make that journey are the ones which will really achieve, which will really get that elixir and succeed. So I think with that, I would like to conclude with just one simple this thing, that I think UX is something which is absolutely essential for businesses to be able to capitalize on for a better future, for a better tomorrow. And today, COVID is a God-given opportunity. If you treat it like that, it's not a and in every thread there's an opportunity. We have come to a stage today where I think there is an opportunity presented to us, and it's an opportunity for us to really move forward and make the best of it. Thank you.